Hello, I'm Toby. I'm Vicar of Martlesham and Brightwell. So I've got three churches. This one that we're in now is St Michael's. It's a modern church. It's got a screen, it's got Wi-Fi, and it's great for streaming out of. But I also have two other churches, St Mary's in Old Martlesham, which is in a bit of a mobile internet dead spot, and Brightwell, which until very recently didn't even have broadband in the village. So it's a real range of things. In terms of filming and live streaming services, what I was interested in was to continue our live stream services. During lockdown, we got quite a good way of doing things, broadcasting from my kitchen, but that's okay when it's just me. And so we wanted to move it to being people in church and still keep the congregation who are wanting to be at home as well. When I was at home, I was just using my laptop, but we worked out that the problem with that is that the laptop is very intrusive. And so we wanted to find a way of continuing our streaming so that we could have a camera that would stream whilst I'm here at St Michael's, but also to be able to record what we're doing. And I wanted to be able to have things so that it would go out to YouTube and to Facebook, where we normally do, and also to be able to incorporate in other people who are not physically in the service, which we've done using Zoom. The system I've got then was to use a Mevo camera, and the great thing about it is it's all portable. Everything about it is wirelessly transmitted. So there's no need for any cables trailing, and also it means that what I have here I can just stick into a small bag and take up to one of the other churches as well. So in terms of the kit that we're using, basically this is my camera, the Mevo camera here, and that on its own will work and it will record. At the back there is an SD card slot, so you can store all your media on there. This also will transmit wirelessly. It's an NDI camera, and you can control it using an app on your phone. So if I just hold that up like that, and I can show you here, this is me on my camera here. And this Sunday we had a 12-year-old operating our camera for us. So in terms of scrolling between scenes and auto-follow, the camera and the app together do it all for you. It really is very, very simple. But at its basicest, you could just sit it and push the button on the back and it will start recording and it will save it for you. Added to that then, we wanted to sort our sound. And so we've got some microphones that are made by Revd. I know nothing about any of this, so I've been advised on this. But basically they come in two parts. This one here, you can clip onto yourself and wear it like an ordinary microphone, and it will be picked up by the other end that plugs into the camera, and that will transmit the sound. Alternatively, if you're feeling a bit more technical, then the end, rather than wearing it yourself, plugs into the headphone output on your sound desk, which is how we would usually use this, and then you have your ordinary microphones and you can have more than one input coming in as well. As you can see by those things, all very light, all very carryable. The only other thing that you'd want is a tripod. I'd love to show you the tripod, but Leonie broke her tripod coming over here, and so she's now using my tripod to film this. But it's a tripod. It's not a massive amount of kit that you need. The only other things you may need are some way of reading the SD card, either to plug that straight into your laptop or to get an SD card reader that will go in so you can take it off. We then take our stream, what's coming out, and we run it through OBS, Open Broadcasting Software. The advantage of this for us is what we want to achieve was to be able to have people at home being able to take part in the service, not just be passively watching, but actively part of the service, as if they were in the room with me at the same time. And so we wanted to be able to put our liturgy, our song words and so on up at the same time. And OBS allows you to do that. Initially, I have to say, it's an incredibly daunting program, and you look at it and you think, how am I ever going to do it? With not that much effort and a few tutorials and a little bit of help from friends, I've managed to get it now so that we can have PowerPoint running at the same time, which has got our liturgy and the video. And what this means is that if we've got a face-to-face service in church, one person presses the buttons to move the PowerPoint on, and that also moves on the stream, and so those at home are able to take part as well. OBS we're then using and sending it out to Facebook and to YouTube. On its own, OBS will allow you to stream to one site, so if you are just using Facebook, that would be fine, or if you're just using YouTube, that would be fine. Not that we're amazing, but we found that some people didn't like YouTube because you get a better experience if you're a YouTube member and have got an account. And so for some people who didn't want to get a Facebook account, we then switched that and said, okay, we'll add on YouTube as well. And so we then needed to send it to two places. You can either do this yourself, which involves lots and lots of very powerful internet, or we pay a restreaming company, we use Caster, in order to send that out. That's costing us around about £13 a month to send out our live streams. But it does mean that you've got a more reliable internet because you're only sending one load of data out rather than two. And if you're doing it from somewhere and everyone else around you suddenly starts using the internet, you're less likely to lose your bandwidth. Here at St Michael's, we've got Wi-Fi in the building. Prior to lockdown, we had Wi-Fi anyway. Just behind me is our church cafe, and so we had the internet mostly for that, so that people could access their emails whilst having coffee. That's fine, but it wasn't nearly enough bandwidth for us to be streaming on reliably. And so we changed to having fibre broadband here, and that's meant that our internet now is good enough to stream from here. But it doesn't apply everywhere. So St Mary's, my other church in Old Martlesham, doesn't have a phone line in, it doesn't have any internet, and to be honest, the mobile internet there can be very dodgy. I struggle sometimes to open emails whilst I'm in the church building. There is a sweet spot just outside the vestry that I've learnt when you're panicking at needing to open something up, but not nearly reliable enough to stream from. So currently what we're doing there is simply to record the service onto our SD card and then to upload it later on. And this actually is a very simple and free option because Facebook and YouTube having a site there is free. So if you don't want to pay for restreaming, then you can just upload later on. Our longer term aim is to look at getting probably a mobile hotspot for the church so that we can live stream. The advantage of this in terms of me is that it means that while we're doing the service is recorded and it's streamed out at the same time, and then I can leave at the end of the service and stop. The downside of recording a service and then having to upload it later is that it's one extra thing to do, which if you've got a tech team who can do that, great. If it's you as the vicar doing it, it's just one more thing to do on what is often a very busy Sunday. So that's why we're going to go down this mobile hotspot route. We're also considering what it would be like to get a phone line installed. From talking to colleagues across the country, I know a number of churches don't have a postcode. And trying to get a phone line installed without a postcode can be a real challenge, but apparently it is possible. What I think we're going to do is to try out with someone who has a mobile hotspot to see, does it work, would it be good enough for what we want, in which case that's probably the cheaper option because we'll just get one of those and pay our monthly fee. If that doesn't work, then we would investigate getting a phone line and having wired internet coming into the church, which will then give us our Wi-Fi and possibly mean that we could plug in our computer directly to the wired internet as well, which will make things more reliable, I suppose. So in terms of content for services, one of the big disadvantages we've got at the moment is that congregational singing is illegal. And our services here, and I'm sure that's the same for a lot of people, are largely based around worshipping God through music. So what we've tried to do is to use music from other sources, and we've done this in several ways. One way is to have people to pre-record the music themselves, and if you're in a family group and able to do that, that's great. Or you can find some apps like a cappella, which will enable you to record 3 versions of yourself doing something. And actually it's been great. We're having suggested this. We've had a few people in the congregation who've really got into this and worked out how to record themselves several times and to put through harmony with just themselves. We've also done music via Zoom, so the musicians have to be in the same place for that, and they will be broadcasting through Zoom, and then we're able to show what's going on in Zoom in our live stream, and now we're back in the church itself. What you do have to be careful of if you are using music is the copyright, of course. So we've got a CCLI streaming license in order to be able to play that. There is a lot of material out there though that is copyright free, and also the Lightwave community have produced quite a lot of stuff. So if you don't have musicians who are able to do this and pre-record themselves, look on the Lightwave website. There's a range of music, so not just of one particular tradition, but there is quite a big range of music that you can try out and include. And actually, one of the things I would say is now is the time to introduce new music to congregations, because as they can't sing, so long as you've got someone who can sing it, people are learning it without having the awkwardness of having to stumble through and sing it. One of the things that we're considering here, which is more of a long-term project, is the ability to live stream funerals and weddings. I noticed during lockdown, going to the crematorium, that funerals with smaller numbers, they were live streaming them. And we now have that ability, and today I did my first service where someone else led and I was involved in streaming the service to a private YouTube page where others who could watch it. Today you're only allowed 30 people to be attending a wedding. This wedding had 200 people who wanted to watch it, and so it enabled it to be going out to a wider audience. And similarly, they had people from across the world who were wanting to be at the funeral but are unable to travel. And so what we're considering longer term is charging people for the live streaming of this. Not necessarily to make huge profits for ourselves, but to cover the cost of the equipment that we've invested in, but also for, in general terms, if you've got someone who's going to fly in from Dubai for a funeral, or they say we'll stay at home and pay for it to be streamed, we're going to charge around about £70 for a funeral or a wedding to be live streamed, and that's hugely cheaper for people. And that gives them the advantage of being able to be part of the service, even if they're at a distance, or even if numbers are limited. I was asked about how do I manage my stress with this. My facetious answer I'm not allowed to give. I think the big thing with all of this though is you have to have a team. During lockdown, when we were just broadcasting from my kitchen, that was fine and I was able to do it. Now we're in church and broadcasting out to people who are coming to church and not coming to church. My role is slipping back into actually leading services and more of being the vicar and less of being the technician. And so we are training people to use the technology. Yesterday in our service we had an 11-year-old running the computer with the PowerPoint and then sorting the live stream, and we had a 12-year-old who was quite happy to learn how to use the app on the camera, on the phone for the camera, and control the filming. It initially seems like a very big thing to say you're going to be the one who's in charge of the live stream, but with a bit of patience and a bit of teaching and a bit of acceptance from the congregation that quite often things go wrong, people seem to have been keen to step up, but I could still do with more. So I would say don't take all this on yourself. Make sure there are others involved, because the more people who are doing it, the less stressful it is for you. And actually what we've found as a result of looking at more technology and different ways of doing services and music and internet and all that sort of thing, it's been that people have got gifts from God that they're able to use. Now here in Martlesham we've got the BT headquarters, so we have a number of fairly technical people who work for BT or have worked for BT, and that's been great. But actually finding other people who've got skills and gifts that they can use to help others to worship, it's part of the service in the same way as setting out the chairs or making the tea and coffee, as used to be, can be a part of. So do invite as many people as possible to be a part of this, because the more who are doing it, the less it comes down to one person. I sold this to my congregation partly also by saying to them that there is still a chance that the day will come when I'm required to self-isolate for 2 weeks and won't be able to be involved in setting up any of this and running any of this. And so it needs to not just depend on me. So hopefully others will come along, and it means that it's more shared out between others. And then we can all join in as priests, as worshipping God, a holy people, able to lead others in their worship. I suppose it's worth ending up by saying, why are we doing all of this? What's the reason behind it? Why spend the money? Why add in the extra tech? Why add in the extra stress? Pull more people in? During lockdown, we moved to solely online services, and in that time I know that some people drifted away, but we also found that people joined us as a congregation. And actually, once you remove the physicality of having to be in the building, people could join in from across the world. So people who had been part of our congregation and had moved away were involved in this. People I know from across the world, my mum, hello mum, she joined in and started watching us from where she was. And so this is a way of growing out and being able to share the gospel to people who are not physically in the building. It links into the Growing in God agenda because they're growing younger. This is hopefully going to attract those who are more into the technology. It links into the growing in number because we're opening it up to those who are not able to come physically to the building. At the moment, there are those who are happy to come and there are those who are not happy to come. But we see this as a more long-term thing, that we will keep on streaming our services. Certainly, we have members of our congregation who were unable physically to come to church prior to COVID, who have now been able to worship together as a family because we are live streaming it. And it means that they're able to be involved in the church and part of the church, although not physically in the building. So to me, this technology thing is just a win-win really. Yes, it's a bit stressful and there is a bit of a cost involved, but actually it's building the kingdom of God through what we're doing.